folks who are out there tuned in with us, hello. Yeah, some are already on, so I'm excited for you to be in with us. We are here. Lit is a video blog that was not quite a year yet, but we're getting up on a year. And it's designed to encourage young brothers, boys of all races, orientations to read more, to look at literature, particularly black and brown boys. You know, we want to see them become the next generation of leaders. And one way we all know is for our boys to be highly literate. So I want to just thank you for tuning in this morning, being interested in what we are doing. We are lit. Tiffany Fondo, who is a brilliant librarian, is the really true visionary behind this project. So Tiffany, kind of share with them a little bit more about the vision for We Are Here Lit.
So this space is to really ground young boys and young Black men in their identity and confirming the need and advocacy for literacy on their behalf. We also want them to be advocates for the community, and the only way to do so is to build them up through literacy as a foundation, because literacy means many things, not just reading the word, but financial literacy, health literacy. There's all types of literacy, but until they understand those foundational skills, they cannot happen. So from the different areas of advocacy, meaning through academics, through the publishing industry, through K-12 education, through higher ed, through all those different avenues, we need to work a little more collectively to advocate for young Black men and literacy. So this is a space where we share information from all those avenues in order to support literacy.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes. And this is a special month, Women's History Month. And hey, I think Women's History Month is 365. Like they say, women hold up the world. Women bring life into this world. And so just to say we're celebrating Women's History Month, again, we are here lit. We recognize that women make contributions 365, you know, but since the world wants to celebrate International Women's Day as well as Women's History Month, we thought, hey, why don't we, do the same? And hey, we think we have someone that we invited, and she's agreed to be a part of. We are here lit because of the work that she's done over the years, creating books that our children, not just our boys, but as an adult, I have several of her books. Schools around the country, libraries around the country, museums around the country, all have her books. And so I want to give a warm welcome, thank you to someone I've worked with in the past, and I'm so glad I met her, Carole Boston Weatherford. Thank you so much for joining us joining me again, and being a part of this vision we have to empower Black boys around literature.
And I'm so happy to be here. And of course, I brought with me Exhibit A. I should say Exhibit J, my son, Jeffery, because he is an example of what can happen when boys are readers and they grow into men who can become leaders and artists and continual learners, really. You know, he's constantly learning, seeking out new knowledge and sharing it with other people. So I'm just pleased and proud to have him with me this morning.
Yes, thank you both so much. And just to have a plug, they are both represented in You Can Fly. Miss Boston Weatherford, the author, and Jeffery, the illustrator. So thank you both for being here. We appreciate you so much. And we're here today to celebrate the work because and your contributions during Women's History Month, because you've really given a voice to Black culture and for children. And so it's important that we recognize you for doing that. So I would like to start off today by asking you, especially within this last week, What is it like being a Black woman today for you?
When Katherine Brown Jackson, I'm going to go back past the week, because the week, like Cory Booker said, this past week would steal your joy if you let it. So I'm going to go back to when Katherine Brown Jackson was nominated by Biden. I didn't realize how moved I was going to be. I'm very aware of the legal history of African Americans in this country, not only because I've written books about it, but I also used to be director of communications for the National Bar Association. And so some of the, civil rights lawyers of the past and people who have gone on to make a name for themselves as freedom fighters in the legal arena today, I came in contact when I was probably about Jeffery's age. So when Biden first nominated Katherine Brown Jackson, and I watched the ceremony, well, before they even started talking, just seeing Kamala, the vice president, Kamala Harris, the nominee, Katherine Brown Jackson, flanking, and the two of them flanking Biden, I got teary-eyed. I was surprised that I was so moved by it. I mean, I had already been moved, when Kamala became the vice presidential nominee and then the vice president. But yeah, it means a lot. It means a lot. It means that we have a seat at yet another table.
Mm-hmm. What is it like for you in the children's literature industry as a Black woman and as a woman? I think both of those, the intersectionality of both of those matter.
Yeah, and I don't know what it's like. I don't know what it would be like if I were someone other than a Black woman. So I don't have a whole lot to compare it with, but I do know that even though these books get published that I write and that other African Americans write, they are still at risk of being marginalized, of being, pigeonholed as maybe they're only for Black kids. No, they're not only for Black kids. They're for kids of all colors, because not only do Black kids need to see themselves in books, but other kids need to see us in books too, because they may only experience each other sometimes vicariously through books. We don't necessarily, our schools are, many of our schools are segregated. So we may not have the chance for that social interaction, but books can open up the world for kids, and it's important. But again, we are at risk of being marginalized in the marketplace. If you go into a majority-owned bookstore, we don't have a whole lot of shelf space, and you can't necessarily find the books. And there's usually a Black section, in the adult department, but not in the children's department. So you really have to look, and the bookstores are not necessarily carrying our titles.
Mm-hmm.
And school libraries are not necessarily buying them either. I mean, I've got 60 books. I can remember going to a school library, and I'm talking too long on this, but it was outside of Memphis, and the librarian said, after the assembly, where they had the whole school packed into the cafeteria for me to present, can you come into the library and sign, autograph books, right? And so she pulled out one book, Moses, and I said,
Wow.
where are the rest? Do you have any others? Where are the rest? That's all we have. We have a limited budget. I looked all around this big library. I said, certainly, I've got 60 some books. Certainly you could have afforded, some other books.
Yes, and it's too, if they have a school library, so that,
Right, that too, there's that too. But this was in an affluent white area.
Yeah, and that,
so they had a school library.
Yeah, and that too comes back to understanding cultural, differences, and understanding that how those different aspects play a part of the collection, and collecting for that too.
Yeah.
One of the things that I thought was important was one time Grace Lynn asked the question, can you name 5 women illustrators? And that blew my mind. But then take it one step further, can you name 5 Black women illustrators? And I was just like, so I wanted to think too.
And they're more now. They're more now.
There are, and
more now.
And to be able to name them is important as well. So I would kind of
Let me try.
Yes.
Well, Aqua Holmes, I'll start with her, because I think she's the only, Aqua Holmes and Demetria Tacumbo of all my books, those are the only 2 Black female illustrators. Oh, Laura Freeman. So those are three. 60 books, I've only worked with 3 Black illustrators, Black female illustrators. And I'm going to throw Nina Cruz in there.
Yes.
And Jan Spivey Gilchrist and Vashti Harrison and April Harrison and Vanessa Brantley Newton.
Yes.
And I'm missing people, but yeah, I got my 5.
Elizabeth Zunin is
Oh
that-
yeah, Elizabeth Zunin, that's right. I forgot about Liz. Yeah, I forget about. I'm not really. I don't think I'm forgetting about the illustrator folks.
No.
I forget about the books sometimes.
I know, because I was like, it's so many. I was just,
Yeah.
but I was just like, so it's important to recognize women illustrators as well,
Yes.
because they're just as important as telling the story.
Yeah.
Like they're hand in hand with the author.
And the
So-
illustrators are really the rock stars of the industry. I mean, they get celebrated in schools, and and at library conferences. And the males tend to be the rock stars of the industry. And maybe that's we could look at other industries where that's also true, but I mean that is the case. I mean, when I present with my son, that he's young and handsome too, but and he's an illustrator, and he is a rapper. So the kids are much more excited about him when I go to school, when we do school visits together. But
they're excited
that's
about
fine.
you too.
That's fine with me. They just think I'm an old lady who's with you.
So,
Developing the content creators, like you said, oftentimes are not recognized, and like you said, because you are a woman, it's really interesting to think about that. But these young people at that early age, they're kind of nurtured into that thought process. So we have to really be careful. And that's why it's so great that you are on today to remind them that, hey, here's a rock star. And we to remind our librarians and educators who are out there tuned in with us to make sure your books are in place. Very quickly, I just got a text from someone. I told them they should put it in the chat box. But someone wanted to know about your upbringing. Who nurtured your love of writing about children?
I'm the child of educators. I made up my first poem in first grade. I said it for my mother on the car ride home from school. She parked the car, asked me to say it again, and she wrote it down. I continued to write in the early grades, and my dad, who was a high school printing teacher, had his students use my poems, some of my early poems, as typesetting exercises. So I got my poems on like little index cards, I saw my work in print at a very early age, had no idea that an author was a career path. I always loved to read. My parents read to me. I read on my own, but I had no idea that the people who were writing the books that I so loved to read were, number one, alive, and number two, getting paid to write the books. And then when I got, in college, in the African-American culture at that time in particular, this is in the 70s, pursuing a creative career was not viewed as practical. And I mean, it's still not viewed as practical, but I mean, I was afraid to pursue any kind of creative career. So I went into PR, public relations, but had a poem published in a city magazine in Baltimore. And that, when I saw my work in print by someone other than my dad, and in a publication that was not, a school publication, because I had been published in school publications, I got it in my head that I'm a poet and I'm going to be an author one day. So I was about 25 when that happened. And I've been on this path ever since. And when Jeffery was a kid, I took him and his sister to the library story time, and they were exposed to some what were known as, at that time, multicultural books. Now we call them diverse books that had not been around when I was a kid. And a light bulb went off on my head, because I was writing poetry for adults and writing for magazines and stuff. And I thought maybe I could write for kids, and yeah, maybe I could. And it turned out that while they were in their little story time, I'd be borrowing books from the library about how to write children's books, and borrowing books. The books that they borrowed became my mentor texts. One in particular I want to pull out that's written and illustrated by a Black woman is Faith Ringgold's Tar Beach.
yes. Can I ask both of you, how have y'all influenced each other in terms of, your relationship and in terms of your work.
Okay, can I start, Mom?
Mhm.
Okay, well, since you came first, right? I grew up around my mom, of course, and she was always who she is today. I would say she was always writing from as long as I can remember. When we were, my sister and I, when we were younger, we were helping with PR, sending out letters and stuff, doing the envelopes and stamping stuff. Didn't understand, what we were doing at that age. Going to
But he got
presentation.
paid. Let me just add that he got paid.
I got paid. It wasn't
exploitation.
just child labor. It wasn't just child labor. We also got paid. So yes, everybody out there watching, we're good. Okay. So also going to presentations with her, seeing her do performances, essentially reading her poetry, talking to schools. So I was immersed in the world of children's books from a very young age. And then, I mean, I guess it's hard not to have something rub off, if you will. And eventually, when the opportunity presented itself, my foot was in the door, and I swung the door open. So.
And for me, Jeffery is, I've got two, probably more than, I probably have more than two muses, but one muse is Billie Holiday. Of course, she's not alive, so it's, she's kind of an ethereal muse. But Jeffery is a muse for me as well. He inspires me, and I really get inspired when we work on projects together, or even when I watch him work on a project of his own. It's just very inspiring that someone that I helped bring into the world could exude the kind of creative spirit that he has. So sometimes I create, I try to come up with projects just for him, like just for his style of art. He creates in scratchboard. So we got a project we've been working on for a while about MC Escher. And we've talked about doing something about jellyfish, and so there's some projects that are conceived, with him in mind.
Right.
Can I ask you, especially for Jeffery, when you're growing up, and I'm assuming, but you can clarify this, that your knowledge of Black history was beyond, like what to me, because I'm reading some of her titles, and I'm just like, I didn't know this person, and I'm grown. You know what I mean? So what was it like having this, like the affirmation of your identity, if you will?
Well, I mean, my mom always encouraged me to be me. Pretty much at every point. There was never any, I want to say I can't remember any point where she said, Jeffery, you shouldn't do that because of X, Y, and Z, or Jeffery, maybe you should pursue something that is going to be, stable or whatever the parents tell kids these days. But she always encouraged me, and she always nourished the creative energy that I was presenting. So, I was always doodling. I got in a lot of trouble for doodling when I was young. But my mom didn't tell me to stop doodling. She put me into art classes. So whatever, literally anything that I ever wanted to do, she would encourage me. When I said that I want to be a rapper, she bought me a microphone, and we turned one of my rooms into a studio. And yeah, it's really just the support. I can't say that I was always extremely aware of my self-identity. Like that came, later in life. I would have experiences. I grew up in a predominantly white area. I was like, this isn't right. This situation isn't right. What they're saying isn't right. But, I didn't have a point of reference or an understanding of how wrong some things were that were going on. And it wasn't until, I went to a HBCU. I went to Winston-Salem State University. And then I went to Howard University for my master's degree. And that's when I really got the perspective that I have today, and the understanding that I've gained about the things that are going on in the world. Once you are aware, you can't really go back. So that was a combination of the energy that she allowed me to journey through, as well as my professors at these different universities. So
And he may be forgetting that when we took family vacations, we always dragged the kids along to historic sites. We went to Birmingham, and we went in 16th Street Baptist Church and the Civil Rights Institute, and we went to museums about the slavery era, and it was uncomfortable for our kids. Jeffrey would get angry sometimes. I can remember one time I thought I had lost him in a museum, and he was sitting on a bench in a room stewing, and he said, it was an exhibition about slavery. He said, "This makes me angry." And he was about 7 years old. And I said, "Well, yeah, you should be angry." So he was exposed to culture and history as those opportunities presented themselves for our family. And we always had books, Black books in the home as well. And he had an extensive library at home, and there were as many diverse titles as we could get our hands on in our home library for the adults and for the children.
I think that's a good point too, to kind of pivot a little bit. You wrote books about Dorothea Lange and Nancy Pelosi, which some might, think are in a sense outside of, some of the scope of what you normally do. Why were those two women chosen, as an interest for books, if you will?
Well, because those women were barrier breakers. And, although they may seem like they're, outside of my wheelhouse, because, in this culture, we have to learn about white people. They're not out, that's my wheelhouse too, although people may not think I own it, or, when people talk about own voices, they say, well, how can you write about this or that or the other that's centered in white culture? Well, it's because I was raised in white culture, because I'm American. I was raised in that culture, and I've had to learn about it. And I admire Nancy Pelosi because she did break the marble ceiling at the U.S. Capitol to become the first woman speaker. And she's also a Baltimorean, and I'm really proud of that. I'm from Baltimore. And Dorothea Lange, I came upon by way of Gordon Parks. Both of them were photographers during the Great Depression for the government, and they went out across the country to document what American life was like. And I'm gonna let my dog in while keep talking.
I was saying, it sounds like Gigi is upset right now.
One of the things too, I think that were interesting about these two books when she's talking about both of these photographers is that both of them, their photography is so prolific and important that it could be used for writing prompts. Just looking at their primary work is what I thought was significant about these two titles and how they kind of work in tandem with each other. I was saying how these two
I heard you.
Yes.
They do. And they're published by the same company, Albert Whitman. The Gordon Parks book came first, was successful, won an NAACP Image Award. And I was just kind of looking at my royalty statements, and that book is probably one of my better selling titles. Nonfiction is not like fiction where it sells 1 million copies or anything most of the time. But a lot of people seem interested in that book, in Gordon Parks. And my aunt was a friend of Gordon Parks, so I became interested in him through doing picture research for an early book that I wrote called Remember the Bridge, Poems of the People. And that's when I discovered the Library of Congress prints and photographs department, and particularly the Farm Security Administration collection, which contains the photographs that those government photographers took across the country during the Great Depression. And there were probably about 15 or 20 different photographers who worked for either the Farm Security Administration or the Office of War, the War Department it was called. That's what the Pentagon was called at that time. And they documented the American experience at that time.
And can I just say too that the Library of Congress website is a great resource for educators and parents to use for images for classroom experience.
Most second that, definitely. Used for illustrations, many hours.
You can get lost on it though if you're really into picture research like I am.
Yeah. maps, everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
Everything.
Songs, videos,
Yes.
everything.
Great.
Hey, Jeffery, really quick, not quick, but you are in a great position as a young man who has had an opportunity, and your mother spoke about it earlier, to be pulled and dragged and taken to all these wonderful historical sites to kind of, part of it is a family vacation, but obviously it nurtured you into the career where you are today. What do you say to parents, and particularly fathers? Many fathers, and I get it. They see a football player who just signed a $200 million contract, and and they see their son make bigger run fast when he chases his son, and he want to lean his son toward, hey, maybe my son has potential to be the next, $200 million athlete. But oftentimes these children also have gifts of drawing, because oftentimes we don't put utensils in the hand of our children, and books oftentimes, we never really find out that skill. So how do there's no magic words per se, but just some words that you would say to, in particular, fathers about their children, boys, really nurturing that talent they may have.
Okay. I mean, absolutely. I personally, I'm not a fan of sports. They say that really, if you want to keep people distracted, give them bread and circus. That's old Roman. It has no purpose. They pay these people more than they pay people who save lives. So at the end of the day, there's way more avenues that you can make a living. And these athletes, after the fact, fathers out there, if you want your son to have, arthritis, broken bones, hip joint problems, then by all means, send them down that path. If that's what you want to do, to each their own. Okay. But, I'm not going to have those problems when I'm older. Well, we'll pray. We'll say that I'm not going to have those problems. Can't say, but statistically speaking, these athletes, they have issues when they get older. And, although the money is great, if your health isn't there to enjoy it, then it's nothing.
Yeah, and everybody's body is not built for it either, even if the person wants to, take that abuse. I mean,
yeah, and
there's such a small percentage, minuscule percentage of the kids who go from, who play these sports all through school, and then there's a small percentage that get college scholarships, and an even smaller percentage that get to go pro. And some of them have put so much emphasis on the sports over literacy and over education, and the schools are not invested. The schools that give you the scholarships, a lot of them are not invested in the education of the athletes. They just want those revenues from those NCAA games and the TV broadcast. And the kids the young men graduate, and they don't have the skills they need to function in society.
Yep. I have several friends who were top tier athletes in high school and in college. And at the end of college, it didn't happen for them. And one of my friends, it was literally like the world, literally his world. He had trained his entire life, assuming that he was going to become part of the NFL. He wasn't going to take no for an answer, but guess what? He had to take no for an answer, because if they say no, you're not making it.
Yeah,
and then he had to choose a completely different career path. So
all you have to do is look at what they've done to Colin Kaepernick. Why would you want your child to be part of a plantation?
I was going to bring that up too, because look also at his documentary, how he pointed out Romare Bearden and how he had another skill set outside of athletics, how he talked about him as an artist, and that athleticism wasn't everything, that he was more than that,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And and I in a way, I probably, maybe I shouldn't even say this publicly, but I'm going to say it. I'm almost glad that he did what he did, and that door closed, because he has so much to offer. And I said, what if he had continued on the field and gotten that concussion thing? And his intellect was in some way damaged, we'd all be losers as a result, because he has so much to offer, so much more to offer outside of sports.
Hey,
not that the NFL was right, the NFL was wrong, and they're still wrong, but he's got so much more to offer than that.
Mm-hmm. Hey, this is Patrick Oliver. I'm here with Tiffany Fontenot, and we are part of the co-founders or co-facilitators of We Are Here Lit. We're celebrating Women's History Month, and we have two special guests, Carole Weatherford and her son Jeffery are here with us. We are doing a monthly interviews, and we're so excited to have this one. Next month we're doing National Poetry Month, which is April, and followed by, we're going to do something around June is Black Music Month. So a lot of great interviews coming up. But again, we're excited to have this interview today. And very quickly, speaking of poetry, you mentioned you start off poetry at a young age. I reading your books, I kind of see that poetry flow in your writings. Is that part of kind of your process? You know, you think poetically in your.
I do. I call poetry my first literary language, and it's always my first inclination when I'm writing something to write it as a poem. So most of my books are poems. Among the recent ones that aren't, let's see, it's called The Faith of Elijah Cummings. That's not poetry, that's prose.
Right.
Freedom on the Menu is actually my best-selling book, and that's prose. And I've got some other books that are written in prose, but most of my books are poetry, whether they're free verse or rhyming poetry. Jeffrey and I have a book coming out together that's about rap. Jeffrey, you want to tell them about that one?
Absolutely. So, well, it started first is okay. I'll get to the base part of it. It's about a child who he grew up basically like me, around somebody who is a poet, and he came out the womb rapping essentially, and he's telling a story about how he came to have these skills, and he's teaching through the story. So telling about hip hop, what's involved, how to perform it, what do you need to do, how do you get good at it. Yeah, essentially how to write your own 16, and it's called Martin Cadence or
no,
MC.
No, it's not. It's called Wrap It Up. Remember?
Wrap It Up.
Wrap It Up. You changed the title.
Change the title. It's okay.
Wrap It Up.
He'll always be Martin Cadence to me. But either way,
that's the character.
That's the character's name
in his head. Yeah, but the character's not named in the book. But it does go through like the different parts of speech that you can use, figurative language that you can use, and then the glossary has there's a glossary that tells what these different these tricks of the wordsmith trade are. Like onomatopoeia and metaphor and
alliteration, all the literary devices that are present, exactly. The common ones.
Exactly.
When is this coming out?
I'm not sure, but it's being illustrated by a mural artist from Philadelphia, and I can't recall his name right now, but
Theodore Harris.
I beg your pardon?
Theodore Harris, is that his name?
I don't know.
Okay.
It might be. I don't know. I just can't remember. I'll look it up. Why don't I look it up while we're and I'll tell you later in this chat. I'll tell you.
While we're on that topic of hip hop and poetry, what are some of the kind of a lot of teachers want to use hip hop in classrooms and things like that. What are some of the things that are important to think about as they do this? Because it can be powerful, or it can, be otherwise. What are some of your thoughts being a poet and an MC?
Do you want to start, Mom?
No, you go ahead.
Okay, cool. So my personal definition of hip hop is higher infinite power healing our people, right? There's a way to present hip hop in the classroom. And it's not just by, turning on the radio and letting kids listen to it. There's songs that have substance and content that can elevate and educate at the same time. And that's the type of content that needs to be presented. So like, for instance, I'll give one example right now. He's a poet. He's a real MC by the name of Lange, right? You know, he doesn't curse in his raps. All of his content is like extremely elevated, like, you know, go into yourself and assess and breathe deep and just esoteric hip hop, essentially, finding yourself, finding purpose, that type of thing. And, you know, being kind to others, like spreading love. So that's just one example. There's plenty of artists who are putting out content that is suitable for a young mind.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I just think that, you know, whether it's hip hop is poetry, first of all.
Absolutely.
You know? Just like other poetry has a place in the classroom, hip hop has a place in the classroom, and poetry can be used as a mnemonic device, something to help kids remember things.
Exactly.
Just like nursery songs are used. You know, we teach kids the ABCs with the alphabet song. So I think, you know, we need to leverage it for what it is and use it to our advantage, and understand that different kids learn different ways. So there are kids who can read something, there are kids who got to get moving, there are kids who are tactile learners, there are kids who are oral learners. And so we've got to teach to all those kids at the same time. And so hip hop is just one tool in the educator's toolbox.
Yeah, absolutely. It again, I just going to continue to piggyback, because I teach, you know, a hip hop workshop, and I've taught it to I don't know how many kids at this point, but one child in particular, he was essentially he was in foster care, right? To make the story as short as possible, and he was having confidence issues and just a hard time getting up in front of people and just talking, essentially. And by the end of the hip hop workshop, you know, he was up and he was rapping to everybody. Like, it was a metamorphosis, if you will. And I know, like, personally for me, you know, I've been through a lot of things, and hip hop was even therapy. Like, at a point, like I told stories about myself on the mic that I had never spoken about before. So, and at that point, you know, the story that was on me was just, you know, it was very dark. And if I hadn't said and told people about it, I wouldn't realize that, you know, my pain is not mine to just hold on to, right? A lot of these hip hop artists, you know, they're not doing anything but expressing the things that they feel, so others know that they're not alone, right? At the end of the day, people just need to know that they're not alone.
And one thing that hip hop has done, it has democratized expression, because anybody who has a phone can record, they can put some beats together, they can record some rhymes, and I mean, I can't, but
you can. Now you got to speak life into yourself.
Other people can. They can express themselves. And the one thing that I have always wanted kids to understand, since I've been presenting, is that their thoughts and their feelings are valid enough to share, to document, to express. And that can be therapeutic and cathartic, and, as Jeffery said, healing for some people. I mean, your expression can not only be healing for you, but like you said, they can find the ears of someone who needs to hear it and heal that person as well. A person you may not ever realize will be healed by your words or by your art.
Yeah, so important.
It is. So, you know, so parents, you know, who are a little scary because their kids are going into creative careers, you know, want to be a visual artist or a poet or a dancer or whatever. It's important work. It's very important work. You know, think about what a dismal place this world would be without the arts.
Yeah, that's a perfect.
And art is political. Art is political too. You know, we can make political. You know, art is almost always political.
Yes.
You know, whether we admit it or not.
Right. Yeah.
If I could swing back on that topic of being political, and we're in the age of when we're seeing censorship, of this wave of censorship in of literature, and inevitably it will extend to other forms of art. It's just starting here per se.
Mhm.
But what are your thoughts about that? Because, you know, it's really a wave of anti-Blackness is how it's starting.
Right. And it's a slippery slope. I mean, it starts with anti-Blackness, and then we get into anti-gay. I mean, that's already manifesting in all these, you know, in Florida with Don't Say Gay, and now Texas, and then we get into, you know, the anti-Asian and the whole undercurrent that I keep waiting for, you know, for all the white women out there who's still voting in the wrong way to understand is it's all about y'all. It's all about women. They want to control you.
Yeah.
They want to control you, but they're trying to get at, you know, if they can't control you, they're going to control us. You know, they want to control, and by they I mean, you know, white males who have had the power and whose greed has been making the decisions and fueling this enterprise that's the United States since 1619.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that's it. It's a very slippery slope, censorship, very slippery slope. And they don't just want to control the people who are, you know, well, politicians are fueling the bans, and they're mobilizing people at the local level, parents at the local level. They want to control not only what their kids can read and learn, they want to control what your kids can read and learn. And that's so dangerous, because they don't want you to learn about yourself.
Yes.
They don't want you to know your history, because that's how powerful it is.
Yeah, they understand.
How empowering.
They understand what they are doing, or else they wouldn't be doing it.
Exactly.
Just like all of the history that's been outside of our education, right? They don't tell us the great feats of African nations. You know, our history starts at you were a slave on a boat. You were our property. That's where you belong. And then you don't learn anything else, like, until civil rights. Like, then we freed you. Abraham Lincoln, by the grace of his white skin, freed you.
Yes. One of the things when we're talking, one of the books that is in question, you know, like is up there is Unspeakable. What I thought too was interesting about this, because I happened to read another book about this page here where it has like the oil rigs and stuff like that. What it meant for me, and what I've taught a lot of teachers, is it's not just about the race massacre, but when I look at this, there's an indigenous piece of this. Indigenous people owned a lot of land that had oil on it.
They took that land. Yeah.
And to talk about how indigenous women were married off to get their land rights, right? A lot of people don't know about that.
Mm-hmm.
But when I looked at this, and I'm like, I don't know if this, but like when a coworker and I happened to work on teaching this book, and like the symbolism of this and how we brought it into teaching this to second, you know, like this book should be used in high school to talk about these things. And, you know, like that part of it, it's more than just what was happening with Black people. There was also what was happening with indigenous people in Tulsa as well. So it's intersectional and
right.
Definitely. That's going through.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, there's always, you know, another story, like you know, the Tuskegee Airmen story. There was, you know, at the same time, these men were training to become the first Black pilots in the U.S. military. They could hardly go off their base in Tuskegee without, you know, fear of being lynched. You know, so they had to stay very close to home. They were, you know, they saw German POWs getting treated better in the United States than they themselves were treated. You know, they had to go across the ocean on a ship that had a rope across, dividing the white troops from the Black troops. So, and then there was the Double Victory campaign, the Double V campaign that Black newspapers started, and it meant victory abroad in World War II and victory at home against racism. And that was largely, you know, white folks didn't like the Double V campaign, but you know, it was the truth.
Yeah.
Truth.
And
so
nobody
we
likes
touched
to.
on all that. We touched on all that in the Tuskegee book.
Right on. Right on. And something that a point that I just wanted to, it's like on me. Black people have been allies to this country against our will, you know, since the conception of the country. And somebody told me today that, you know, Black people need to be allies. And I'm literally like, I literally love everybody. I have zero issues with anybody that doesn't have an issue with me. But allyship, I'm tired of being an ally and giving that energy and it never being reciprocated, because it's never reciprocated.
Yeah, and that's what the coach Dungy said, that we have loved America, but America has not loved us back.
Never, not for a second.
Not loved us back. And that's why it's so important that we have to love our kids and encourage our kids and build them up through the knowledge that we pour into them with books and with by taking them to the library. You know, a lot of these things are free. And I mentioned taking Jeffrey. Yes, we went to some different places on vacation. The vacations cost money, but some of the places we took them were free. And every time that there was an opportunity in our area to see something, learn something about African-American culture, we went there. And he and his sister would protest. They're like, do we have to go somewhere educational?
We would.
Yes, you do.
We would.
Yes, you do.
Right. And of course, that's, you know, an important foundation of who I am today. So yeah. Thanks, Mom. Of course.
It comes back around.
Yeah. Drags you around.
Right. Right.
We got a couple of questions here that I want to get to, because we're about 8 minutes away, 6 minutes away from finishing up. Brandon Campbell had a question about what advice do you have for a new author wanting to self-publish a kid's book? Where would they start, and what is the best resources for them?
Well, there are lots of platforms that you can self-publish. We've used Amazon Kindle.
Direct Publishing.
Yeah, Kindle Direct Publishing. But I would say, you know, whether you want to self-publish or be published by a mainstream publisher, small, whether it's small press or large, don't rush yourself. You know, put your time into your craft, you know, perfecting your craft. Because since anybody can publish now through Amazon Kindle or these other platforms, everything that's self-published is not necessarily quality. And it doesn't necessarily even sell. You know, people don't necessarily even make money off of it. So, you know, although, and that used to be called vanity, you know, vanity publishing. So don't rush yourself. Understand that if you have a gift, then give it time to develop, to grow. Writing is a developmental process. I think art, you know, you have to practice. You know, they talk about your studio, your practice. There's a reason they keep talking about practice, because Jeffrey, and I'll let you take it from there, Jeffrey.
I mean, practice makes perfect. There's no way that you're going to be great at anything by not participating in that skill, right? I don't know how many pictures of hands I've drawn in my life. Like there was a whole semester, I feel like I was just drawing my hand in different positions because I felt like I couldn't draw hands. And, you know, as an artist, that's a necessity, right? So, and outside of that, even spending 48 hours on one piece of art, you know, there's a massive level of dedication that it takes to be successful, right? The easy road is usually not going to lead to much, and the hard road leads to, you know, greatness. That's pretty much how things go. If you choose the easy road all the time, you know, life's going to be hard. But if you choose the hard road, then life's going to be easy.
Yeah, I call it path of least resistance.
That's a great lesson too, when students or young people are learning how to write, and it seems so frustrating that you just don't want to deal with it, but it's just a practice.
Right.
Building on things. Like, don't give up, because that your voice is so important.
Absolutely.
And I would say, you know, for parents, you know, often in a classroom, you know, kids are being timed with their writing, and they may not have time to rewrite, but rewriting is the most important part of the writing process. And if you want your child to become a better writer, have them rewrite things they've already written. even if they're not going to get graded on it. You know, and the kids are going to hate me for this. You have them rewrite, you know, if they get a paper that's graded, well, okay, how can you improve this? Rewrite it. And that shows them that when they rewrite, they get it R-I-G-H-T, they get it right. And it gets, with each revision, it gets better and better and better. So don't let your kid just, you know, write a paragraph and then, it's, you know, the periods at the end and write their name. No, let's look at it and rewrite. You could make this better. Rewrite it.
And two, writing about things that you just loved, like to write about, just
Right.
at home,
That
just
too.
write about those things that you just like and just let it go and just let it be for what it is. And
Exactly, that too. Yeah, you have to enjoy it, you know.
And another point to that is to attend, I mean, events like this where writers like yourself, you and Jeffrey, you're sharing your wisdom, your techniques, your process, you know. And so there are writer conferences that are, you know, writing conferences that are all over the internet that are featuring, again, people like yourself that people should attend more of, so you can get firsthand knowledge, firsthand information.
Absolutely. I would love to piggyback off what you're saying there, because every room that I have been a participant in at this point in my life, I've gotten to by standing on the shoulders of giants. Every single room that I've been in, I didn't, you know, I'm not going to claim any of the knowledge or anything like that, because, you know, I've had mentorship, tons of mentorship. I was always, anything that I ever wanted to do, and my mom will clarify this, I'm always investing in myself. I don't care how much it costs, whatever. I will literally, if somebody has knowledge that I think will help me get to a level that I want to get to, I am going to them and I am going to be like, hey, how much is mentorship? Or can you teach me what you're doing? Like, how do I get to where you are? Right? And that's what you have to do. You can't be afraid to ask questions, right? Because a person who asks questions is a fool only for that second. But a person who never asks the question is a fool forever.
Yeah. Part of my teaching philosophy is it's more important to ask questions than to know the answers. Because the answers are out there, but you got to ask the question first.
that is key. I love that. The mentorship and the questions, that is a life lesson, Yes. One last thing, I was wondering if you had a message for young people, especially young Black males, to promote giving agency and a voice in storytelling, poetry, and visual arts. What are some of the things that, if there was a message that you can give them, what would it be outside of what you already shared?
Well, your voice and your vision matter. Share it.
Yeah, your voice and your vision matter. You know, life is going to try and break you. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything about this. Like, everything that the society is not meant for you to feel good and to get ahead, right? You have to speak life into yourself, because nobody is going to speak life into you, right? Outside of your parents, if you're lucky, because I've been lucky. My parents are always speaking life, but I know other parents who don't do that, right? So you have to be your number one, always. You have to get up in the morning, right? Get up and attack the day. Like, nobody is going to be able to accomplish the things that you envision for yourself but you.
Right.
It's up to you. So, yeah.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Wow.
Yes.
Thank you, both of you, so much. I guess those were kind of our closing words. It was so dynamic. But I want to ask if you have any closing words, because those were pretty darn good. But if you have any closing words you want to share with the individuals who have been watching us, who have been part of this conversation today?
Well, I'm going to do a plug. Please check out our latest collaboration. It's called Call Me Miss Hamilton. It's very timely, even though it's about a court case that took place in 1960. It's about an unsung hero of the civil rights movement, Mary Hamilton, who got arrested, would not answer in court to her first name because she heard white people being called Miss and Mr. And she sued with the help of the NAACP all the way to the United States Supreme Court and won. And it is because of the Miss Mary case that plaintiffs, defendants, witnesses of all colors in court must be addressed with honorific titles such as Miss, Mr., Miss. Now, there's a direct line between her fight to be called Miss, to be treated with respect, and those hearings that took place this past week for Katherine Brown Jackson, during which she was disrespected by white male senators. And there are no Black female senators, and only two Black male senators. And she was disrespected, even though she's a federal judge. And so the struggle continued for African-American women and people of color in general, for us to secure equality and respect. So the book is Call Me Miss Hamilton. It's illustrated by Jeffery.
I have a little poem that I can share about my mom that I wrote.
Please do.
So this poem is called Son to Mother, because you should always, like, all the young people out here looking, you should definitely respect your mom. I'm going to say 99.9% of the time, she has your best interest at heart. Okay. 99.9% of the time. So
watch out for that other one.
That's right. So son to mother, a queen without a crown is still a queen nonetheless. A queen is a queen by how she thinks and not her dress. A queen inspires ladies everywhere she goes. A queen is still a queen without a regal rose. This queen is a legend, and this queen tells the tales of others. And I'm so glad that this queen is my mother.
Oh, thank you.
I'm done. That was just awesome.
Oh, I appreciate
That
it,
was
y'all.
awesome.
Yeah, so
Look at that. Women's History Month came right back around.
gotta end it on the Women's History Month note.
Yes. Hey, quick
Thank you
shout
so
out
much.
to the folks with the comments in the comment section. Brandy, Judy, Emily Black, Georgia Morris. Thank you so much for your comments and your questions.
Yes, appreciate everybody tuning in. Thank you.
Yes. And thank you. Well, I just want to give you your roses now for just creating this legacy in terms of your books, because these are just an amazing amazing storytelling. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Mom.
Yes, thank you both.
Bye. Peace.
Take care, everyone. Peace and love.
Thank
And
you.
thank you for having us.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.